Hello guys, Antoine here for Simarchitecture and welcome back to a very special build. It is special because today we're building one of my favorite places on earth, which is the Queen's Hamlet in Versailles. So if you're not really aware of Versailles or about the French history, French royal estates, let me tell you a bit about the history of this place and then we will talk about the Sims version I made of it. So the Queen's Hamlet, as I just said, is located in Versailles on the estate of the palace, which is a very large estate actually. It's around 800 hectares and it has several parts. So there is the main palace with the garden and the Great Park. And there's another estate inside the estate, which is called the Trianon estate. There is two palaces. There is the Grand Trianon, built by Louis XIV, just like the main palace. It was built as a countryside home. It's like 1 kilometer away from the main palace. And it was meant for a private use. So the king was alone there without all the court people. He could just go there with whoever he wanted. And only a few privileged people were invited to have a rest or have a few days there with the king. This is actually a pretty large palace, and next to this one there is a smaller one called Petit Trianon, which was first designed by or for Louis XV and his mistress Madame de Pompadour. He died and she died before really using this palace. So later, when Louis XVI came to the throne, he gifted this small palace to his wife, who is the most famous queen of France, Marie-Antoinette. And it quickly became Marie-Antoinette's favorite place because unlike in the main palace, she could really be herself without being surrounded by hundreds of people during whole the day. She could have a more private life, and that was really something she was looking for. So yes, the Petit Trianon became her favorite place and she did many works on it. Not really on the palace itself, but on the surroundings, especially the gardens. So there's a French garden and there's a big English park. And the English park as well as the Hamlet were both designed by her favorite architect, who's called Richard Mick. And the Hamlet was built, or the work on the Hamlet started 6 years before the Revolution, so in 1783, and it was achieved in 1786, so 3 years before the Revolution. So this place was a very special place, because you have to imagine that in the 18th century, people, even the royals, were not traveling anywhere. And I think Marie-Antoinette and Louis XVI went once to the coast, which was like 200 kilometers away from Versailles, but they didn't go any further in their reign. So building Hamlet was first a way to travel, to have a small getaway kind of. And it was also built at a time where philosophers were talking about how important the nature was for the human beings and how important it was to be connected to nature. And only in nature you can understand who you truly are. So it was built in this trend, but the main purpose of this Hamlet was to create a place which was the best place possible for the education of the royal children, so for the children of Marie-Antoinette and Louis XVI. It was designed as an educational place. There's the Hamlet itself, which is organized around a lake, and there are several houses which are called in French fabriques. Each of them have a special purpose. So one of them is dedicated to dairy products, to fish, to vegetables, to fruits. There were animals everywhere. there were actually real peasants that were enrolled or involved in the life of the hamlet, and they were taking care of the plants, the vegetable gardens, the animals, and they were paid to be here, though they were really privileged peasants. So there were the small fabric. There's the main building that you will see a little bit later in this build, the Queen's House, which was recently restored because back then it was in a really poor shape, and a few years ago it was restored back to its original glory, and now it's a very surprising place. You will see just after my explanation. And a little further there is a farm, like probably 200 meters away from the hamlet. There's a larger farm with a lot of animals, which is still active today, so you can go there and see all the animals. It's a very lovely place. As I said, the hamlet is one of my favorite places on earth because it has a very special poetic atmosphere. The light there is absolutely incredible, especially at the beginning of fall. The light is so warm, and this is a place which is real far away from the main palace, and most of the tourists don't go to the hamlet. So when you go there in the evening, you're absolutely alone, and you can just listen to the wind, the birds singing, the sound of the water. It's, for me, like heaven on earth. And this is also a very melancholic place, I would say. I don't know really why, but this is what I feel when I get there. And I guess that some of you who are watching the video already went to the hamlet, and for the others, I really hope, if you're interested, that one day in your life you will be able to go there, because this is a really special place, and I can't imagine that someone wouldn't feel amazing getting there. So for this build, I had to downsize a little bit the main pond, which is much larger in real life. I also have to select the most iconic houses or fabric. So we have the Queen's House. We changed a little bit since Marie-Antoinette let it build, because it was then sort of remodeled, especially the interior, for Napoleon's second wife, Marie-Louise. So most of the interior are in an empire style, as you will see. I really tried to stay close to the real style, and I think it's quite identical to the real house. So yes, there is the Queen's House. There is the Marlborough Tower, which is what looks like a lighthouse. This is where dairy products were consumed, as well as fishes from the lake. There is the Dove Cote, I think it's called. This is where you were taking care of doves and pigeons, which is a small house. I don't really know what it looks like in the inside because it's closed. It's probably quite in a poor shape because those places were meant to be to last forever. Actually, it was just it feels a little bit like Disneyland. These are not very well built buildings. It's just something that was not meant to be there for centuries, so they have to be restored, and it takes a long time. So this house, I don't know what's inside, but it has lovely gardens. Every house has beautiful vegetable gardens. I also built the watermill, which is a wonderful place as well. It's really picturesque. And between the watermill and the Queen's House, there should be a boudoir, but I don't have enough space to build it. So imagine a very tiny house surrounded by vegetable gardens, and it was just a resting room for the Queen. There are other houses which I couldn't put in this slot because it was too small, even though it's the biggest one. But they're all in the same style, in a very rustic style, or at least it looks like the idea the royals had of what the countryside was like. There is also, I'm not sure we will see it in this video, but if you download the build, you will see it. There are some ruins, because 2 of the houses were destroyed during the revolution, and they were not rebuilt after then. So now all you can see are like stones on the floor that are representing where the walls were of these houses. So now you can just go inside and see it on the stones if you want. But yes, that's it. I really tried to stick close to the real place, and it was not easy, especially in The Sims, because the houses are quite quirky, especially the Queen's house, which has different shapes, and yes, it was hard, but I think I really did it justice. So if you've been there, tell me what you think about my version of the Queen's house. It's a tiny little bit smaller than the actual house, especially this kind of covered passage that links the 2 parts of the house. It's a little longer in real life, and it's a little curved also, but it was not possible to do curve in The Sims, as you know. If you're playing this house or in this build in-game with your Sims, it's totally possible, because there's everything you need. There are several bedrooms, only one in the Queen's house, but there's another one in the watermill. There are several kitchens. Oh yes, by the way, I forgot about what is called in French le réchauffoir. It is another big house behind the Queen's house, and it was only for the kitchens. It's also a very beautiful place that we restored at the same time as the Queen's house. And yes, it's called réchauffoir, which means reheat or reheating place, because it was not properly a kitchen. The dishes came from the Petit Trianon a few hundred meters away and were reheated in this house before being served to the Queen and her guests in the house. So yes, as I said, there's everything you need, including also other small resting rooms, bathrooms, toilets, and yes, I think it's just an amazing place for your Sims to spend time in, because yes, it's just paradise on earth, just like the real place. I think I told you everything about the build, and just before I go, I would just ask you what you think about the editing, especially the end of the editing. I really try to make it as cinematic as possible, and I personally love the effect. It has a very cinematic vibe and melancholic vibe also, and I think it's really beautiful. And tell me what you think about this kind of presentation. It's not completely different from the other split build I've done recently, but I think there's something which is more cinematic or photographic, I don't really know. So yes, I would be glad to have your opinion about the edit and about the build itself. Do not hesitate to tell me what you think about it. If you've been to Versailles or the Hamlet, feel free to tell me your experience and what you felt when you were there. I would be really glad to read your comments and to know about your experience of this place, which once again is really special in my heart. So now it's time for me to leave you. I really hope you enjoyed this moment with me, and I will see you next time. Bye.